Margaret O'Brien stood in the Montana dust watching a stranger tear legal papers in half while her 5-year-old daughter screamed from a kidnapper's grip 50 yards away. The man who'd hunted them across 2,000 miles held a gun. The cowboy she'd married weeks ago held another. And in the next 60 seconds, everything she'd fought for would either be won or lost forever. But to understand how a Philadelphia widow ended up in a standoff in Silver Canyon, we need to go back to a railway platform 3 months earlier, where a desperate woman made the gamble of her life. If you enjoy stories of courage, redemption, and unexpected love, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you were watching from. Margaret O'Brien stood on the wooden platform of the Philadelphia railway station, gripping a crumpled advertisement in her sweating palm. Behind her, Richard O'Brien's voice cut through the summer heat like a blade. "No man in Montana wants a whale for a wife, Margaret. Come back before you embarrass yourself further." The paper trembled in her hand. She could smell the coal smoke from the waiting locomotive, feel Emma's small fingers clutching her skirt, hear the murmurs of passengers pretending not to stare at the large woman and the thin man shouting at her. The advertisement read, "Rancher seeks sturdy, healthy woman for marriage. Montana winters are hard. Beauty not required, must be strong." Richard stepped closer, his breath reeking of whiskey and entitlement. "You think running changes anything? I have lawyers. I have judges. That child belongs with proper family, not a woman who can't even control her own appetite." Maggie turned. At 26, she had learned to recognize cruelty in many forms. Richard wore it like cologne. "Emma is my daughter. Thomas left her to me." "Thomas left you 40% of O'Brien's shipping. That's what this is really about." Richard's smile was all teeth, no warmth. "Come back. Sign the papers. Give me custody and controlling interest. I'll let you keep a small allowance. You can live quietly. No one needs to know about this episode." The locomotive whistle screamed. Final call. Emma whispered, "Mama." Maggie looked down at her daughter. 5 years old, dark curls Thomas's eyes. The only good thing her marriage had produced before a runaway carriage took her husband and left her alone with his predatory younger brother. She thought about the letter in her bag. Jacob Thornton's reply to her inquiry had been brief. "Can you work? Can you survive hard winters? Can you love a place that doesn't forgive weakness? If yes, come to Billings. I need a partner, not an ornament." "We're leaving," Maggie said. She picked up their single carpet bag and lifted Emma onto her hip. The conductor helped them aboard. As the train lurched forward, she saw Richard on the platform, fury twisting his features. He shouted something about courts and consequences, but the steam drowned him out. Inside the passenger car, Maggie found 2 seats near the back. Emma settled against her thumb and mouth. An elderly woman across the aisle gave Maggie a look of pure disdain, then pointedly turned away. Maggie pulled out the advertisement again. She'd answered dozens before receiving Jacob Thornton's letter. Most had gone unanswered. 3 had sent polite rejections after she'd been honest about her appearance. One had written back, "I asked for a wife, not a circus attraction." But Jacob Thornton had written, "Mrs. O'Brien, I appreciate your honesty. I've been married before. My wife was beautiful. She died trying to stay that way. I won't make that mistake again. Arrive in Billings by mid-June, wire ahead, bring warm clothes." The train picked up speed, carrying them west. Away from Philadelphia society, away from Richard's lawyers, and threats, away from everything familiar. Toward a man she'd never met in a place she'd never seen, with nothing but hope and desperation to sustain her. Emma stirred. "Will he like us, Mama?" "I don't know, sweetheart." "Uncle Richard didn't like us." Maggie's throat tightened. "Uncle Richard doesn't like anyone. Mr. Thornton is different." "How do you know?" "Because he asked for strong, not beautiful. Because he admitted his first wife died. Because he wrote 3 letters answering her questions about Montana winters, about ranch life, about whether a woman with a child would be welcome. Each letter had been honest, almost brutally so." "I just do," Maggie said. But she didn't, not really. She knew only that staying in Philadelphia meant losing Emma to Richard's lawyers, losing the company Thomas had built, losing everything. Montana was a gamble, but staying was certain destruction. The journey took 6 days. Maggie spent them teaching Emma letters, reading her grandmother's old herbal medicine journals, trying not to think about what awaited them. The other passengers kept their distance. One woman told the conductor that large people shouldn't take up 2 seats, though Emma barely weighed 40 pounds. Maggie had learned to make herself small in spirit, if not in body. She spoke quietly, moved carefully, apologized for existing. It was easier than fighting. On the fourth day somewhere in Nebraska territory, Emma asked, "Why doesn't Uncle Richard like you, Mama?" Maggie looked out at the endless grasslands. "Because I'm fat, sweetheart." "But Papa liked you. Papa said you were soft and warm and perfect for hugging." Thomas had said that. He'd been kind, not passionate, not romantic, but genuinely kind. Their marriage had been arranged by their fathers, both shipping merchants. Thomas had treated her with respect, had never criticized her body, had given her Emma and then died before she'd learned whether kindness could become love. "Papa was special," Maggie said. "Will Mr. Thornton be like Papa?" "I don't know." The train rattled westward. Mountains appeared harsh and beautiful. The air changed, grew thinner, drier. Passengers disembarked at each stop until only a handful remained. Maggie watched the landscape transform from gentle farmland to something wild and unforgiving. On the sixth morning, the conductor called Billings, Montana territory. 10 minutes. Maggie's hands started shaking. She smoothed Emma's dress, checked their bag, tried to calm her racing heart. What if Jacob Thornton took one look at her and changed his mind? What if this was all a mistake? What if... The train hissed to a stop. Through the window, Maggie saw the platform, a handful of buildings clustered around the station. Beyond them, nothing but open country stretching to distant mountains. And on the platform stood a man, tall, weathered, a scar cutting through his jaw, cowboy hat pulled low. He stood utterly still, watching the train with an expression Maggie couldn't read. "That's him," she whispered. Emma pressed her face to the glass. "He looks scary." He did. Everything about him spoke of hard country and harder choices. His clothes were worn but clean. His boots showed years of use. His hands, visible, even from here, were scarred and calloused. He looked nothing like the Philadelphia gentleman Maggie had known, with their soft hands and softer convictions. The conductor opened their door. "Billings, ma'am." Maggie stood. Her legs felt like water. She took Emma's hand and walked to the exit. The conductor helped them down, his expression carefully neutral. Maggie's feet touched Montana soil for the first time. Jacob Thornton walked toward them. Maggie had time to notice details. The way he moved, economical and purposeful. The gun on his hip, worn like it belonged there. The lines around his eyes that spoke of squinting at horizons. He stopped 3 feet away. Silence stretched. Emma hid behind Maggie's skirts. Jacob's eyes traveled over Maggie, once a quick assessment. His expression didn't change. Maggie had braced herself for disgust, for disappointment, for the look men gave her when they'd expected someone smaller, someone acceptable. She didn't see any of that. Margaret O'Brien. His voice was low, rough-edged, Western accent she'd only heard in dime novels. "Yes, this is Emma, my daughter." He nodded, looked down at Emma. "Hello, Emma." Emma said nothing, another beat of silence. Maggie felt sweat trickling down her back despite the morning cool. Say something, she thought. Tell me this was a mistake. Tell me to get back on the train. End the suspense. Jacob Thornton took off his hat. His hair was dark, threaded with gray at the temples. His eyes were brown, hard, but not cruel. "You're perfect," he said. Maggie blinked. "I'm sorry. Perfect for Montana. Strong, healthy. You'll survive winter." He put his hat back on. "Let's go home." He picked up their carpet bag like it weighed nothing and started toward a wagon. Maggie stood frozen. Perfect, no man had ever called her perfect. Certainly not on first sight. Emma tugged her hand. "Mama, he's leaving." Maggie hurried after him. The wagon was sturdy, built for work. 2 horses waited patiently. Jacob loaded the bag, then turned and offered his hand to help Maggie up. His palm was rough, warm. He lifted her with ease, then swung Emma up beside her. He climbed onto the driver's seat and took the reins. "It's 3 hours to the ranch. There's water in the canteen. Food in the basket if you're hungry." "Thank you." He clicked his tongue. The horses started moving. Billings disappeared behind them. The land opened up, vast and empty. Maggie had never seen so much sky. Back home, buildings crowded the horizon. Here there was nothing but grass and distant mountains, in a silence so complete it felt physical. After 20 minutes, Emma whispered, "Mama, I need the necessary." "Mr. Thornton," Maggie began. "Jake. You can call me Jake." Jake, Emma needs to, she needs to stop. He pulled the wagon over without comment. There's nothing out here but grass. Find a spot. Maggie helped Emma down. They walked a short distance away. The emptiness was terrifying and exhilarating. No walls, no neighbors, no one watching and judging. Just wind and grass and sky. When they returned, Jake had moved to the back of the wagon, giving them privacy to climb back up. Such a small gesture, but it spoke of consideration. They rode in silence for another hour. Maggie studied him when he wasn't looking. His hands on the reins were competent, gentle with the horses. His profile was stern, but not angry. He seemed comfortable with quiet. Finally, he spoke. You should know about Carolyn. Maggie's chest tightened. Your first wife. She died 3 years ago, childbirth, baby too. I'm sorry. He was quiet for a long moment. The only sounds were the wagon wheels, the horses, the wind. Then Caroline was beautiful. Philadelphia beautiful. That's what killed her. Maggie didn't understand. What do you mean? She read magazines, society pages, pictures of New York ladies, kept getting thinner, said she wanted to stay pretty for me. His voice went flat. She starved herself beautiful, and it killed her. The baby too. Not enough strength to survive labor. The words hung in the air, terrible and honest. Maggie thought of the disdainful look she'd received her entire life, the magazine illustrations that promised happiness through thinness, the constant message that a woman's worth lived in her waistline. That's why you asked for sturdy, she said quietly. I need a partner who can survive Montana. Winter here kills the weak. Work is hard. I won't watch another woman fade away, trying to be something magazines say she should be. He glanced at her. You look like you eat. That's good. That's what I need. It should have been insulting, but something in his tone made it sound like praise. I do eat, Maggie said carefully. I've been told it's my greatest failing. By who city people who've never missed a meal in their lives? He shook his head. Out here, strength matters. Everything else is decoration. Emma had fallen asleep against Maggie's side, lulled by the wagon's motion. Maggie stroked her daughter's hair and tried to process this strange man with his strange compliments. The ranch, she asked. What's it like? 2,400 acres. Good water, decent grass, house is solid. I've got 3 hands, Clem, Jose, and Billy. Good men. There's a housekeeper, Mrs. Chen. She's Chinese, came over 20 years ago. Keeps everything running, he paused. They'll be surprised. I didn't tell them I was getting married. Why not? Because I wasn't sure you'd come. Honest again, brutally so. I almost didn't, Maggie admitted. I thought you might be dangerous crazy, he almost smiled. Might be, but I promise you this, I won't lie to you, I won't raise a hand to you or the child, and I won't let you starve yourself trying to be something you're not. That's my offer. You can still say no. Could she, where would she go? Back to Philadelphia, to Richard's lawyers, forward into the unknown with this stern stranger who called her perfect. I won't say no, Maggie said. Good. They rode on. The land began to change, growing more varied. A creek appeared winding through the grass, trees clustered along its banks. In the distance, Maggie saw buildings. Black Creek Ranch, Jake said. The main house was 2 stories, solid wood with a wide porch. Outbuildings scattered around it, barn, bunkhouse, smokehouse, chicken coop. Horses grazed in a corral. A garden struggled in a fenced plot. As they approached, 3 men emerged from the barn. They stopped and stared. Jake pulled the wagon to a halt. Clem, Jose, Billy. This is Margaret O'Brien. And Emma. They'll be staying. The men looked from Jake to Maggie to each other. The oldest Clem, with a gray beard and shrewd eyes, recovered first. Ma'am, he touched his hat brim. Margaret is fine. Or Maggie. Maggie, he nodded. Welcome to Black Creek. Jake climbed down and came around to help Maggie. She saw the younger hands, Jose and Billy, exchanging glances. Not hostile exactly, just surprised. Emma woke as Maggie lifted her down. She looked at the house, the men, the vast emptiness around them, and her lower lip trembled. Jake noticed. He crouched down to Emma's level, making himself smaller, less intimidating. You like horses? He asked. Emma nodded, uncertain. There's a mare in the barn, just had a foal. Want to see? Can I? Mama Maggie hesitated. Jake stood, met her eyes. She saw the question there. Do you trust me with your daughter? Yes, Maggie said, but don't touch anything without asking. Yes, ma'am. Jake offered his hand to Emma. After a moment, she took it. Maggie watched them walk toward the barn, this tall cowboy and her tiny daughter. Clem came to stand beside his. Boss didn't mention he was getting married. It was sudden. Mail order, no point lying. Yes. Clem studied her with the same shrewd assessment Jake had used. You know about Caroline? He told me. Good. Boss don't talk about her much, but she's still here. In his head. He paused. You seem different from her. That might be good. Or it might not be. Time will tell. He picked up the carpet bag. Mrs. Chen's inside. She'll show you the house. We eat dinner at 6. Hope you're hungry, Mrs. Chen cooks enough for an army. He walked toward the house. Maggie stood alone in the yard, letting the reality settle over her. This was home now. This ranch, these men, this hard country. A woman appeared on the porch, small, ancient Chinese. She wore a simple dress and an expression of deep skepticism. You are a new wife. Her English was accented but clear. Yes, I'm Maggie, Margaret. Mrs. Chen came down the steps with surprising speed for her age. She circled Maggie, once examining her like livestock at market. Good, she pronounced finally. Last wife too skinny, blow away in wind, you stay put. It was the second compliment Maggie had received for her size in one day. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Come, Dab, Mrs. Chen gestured toward the house. I show you everything, then you rest. Long journey, yes. Very long. Inside the house was clean but sparse. Front room with fireplace, sturdy furniture, no decoration. Kitchen with a massive stove, wooden table shelves of supplies. Upstairs, 4 bedrooms. Mrs. Chen opened the largest. Master bedroom, you sleep here now. Maggie's stomach dropped. She hadn't thought about sleeping arrangements, about what Jake would expect. They were married legally. The ceremony had been done by proxy papers signed and witnessed in Philadelphia before she left. But they were strangers. Mrs. Chen saw her face. Master Jake, he sleep in barn since Caroline die. Not come in this room. You have it alone. Relief in something else. Loneliness, maybe. Where will Emma sleep? Room next door, or here with you. You choose. Maggie walked to the window. It overlooked the ranch yard. She could see Jake and Emma at the corral fence looking at horses. Emma was smiling, pointing. Jake was listening with complete attention. Mrs. Chen was Caroline. Was she very beautiful? Silence. Then, like China doll, delicate, break easy. The old woman's voice softened. Master Jake, he blame himself. Think he should force her eat. But how you force grown woman? She want be thin, she be thin. She die thin. He seems hard. He is hard. Montana make him hard, but good man underneath. He keep his word. He protect what is his. Mrs. Chen moved toward the door. You rest. I bring water for washing. Dinner at 6. Dress simple. We work people here. After she left, Maggie sat on the bed. The mattress was firm, the quilt handmade. Through the window came the sounds of ranch life, horses, chickens, men's voices. Emma's sudden laugh. She thought about Philadelphia, about Richard's threats, about the life she'd left. Then she thought about Jake's words. You're perfect for Montana. Maybe for the first time in her life, being large and strong was exactly right. She unpacked the carpet bag. Her few dresses, Emma's clothes, her grandmother's journals, the one photograph of Thomas. She set it on the bedside table. He looked young and kind, frozen in silver gelatin. I'm doing my best, she told the photograph. I'm keeping Emma safe. That's what you would have wanted. The house creaked around her, settling into evening. Downstairs, she heard Mrs. Chen preparing dinner. Outside, male voices called to each other. Normal sounds, work sounds, life continuing. Maggie washed her face in the basin Mrs. Chen had brought, changed into a cleaner dress, brushed and repinned her hair. When she looked in the small mirror above the washstand, she saw a woman she barely recognized. Windburned, tired, but not defeated, not yet. At 6, she went downstairs. The kitchen table was crowded, Jake at the head, the 3 ranch hands along one side, Mrs. Chen bustling between stove and table. Emma sat in a chair next to an empty seat clearly meant for Maggie. Jake stood when she entered. The hands scrambled to follow his lead. Sit, Maggie said, embarrassed. But they waited until she was seated before sitting themselves. Ranch manners, apparently. Mrs. Chen brought food, beef stew thick with vegetables, fresh bread, butter, a pie cooling on the counter. Maggie's stomach growled audibly. Billy, the youngest hand, grinned. Good to hear a woman with an appetite. Mrs. Chen's cooking is wasted on us. We don't appreciate it proper. You appreciate it plenty, Mrs. Chen said, swatting him with a towel. You eat like starving wolf. Dinner conversation was sparse but not uncomfortable. The men talked about cattle, about needed repairs, about weather signs. Emma ate steadily, eyes drooping. Maggie found herself relaxing slightly. Then Jake spoke. Maggie knows about Caroline, too. The table went silent. Good, Clem said finally. Better everything's clear from the start. I won't have her treated like she's replacing anyone, Jake continued, his voice firm. She's here because I asked her to come. Because the ranch needs a woman's hand. Because, he paused, because I need a partner. Anyone got a problem with that? No one spoke. Good. Jake turned to Maggie. You have questions about the ranch, about work, about anything you ask. Clem knows cattle. Jose knows horses. Billy knows fixing things. Mrs. Chen knows everything else. And what do you know? Maggie asked. The corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile. I know when to listen to people smarter than me. After dinner, Mrs. Chen shooed everyone out. Maggie helped clear the table despite the housekeeper's protests. Through the window, she watched Jake talking to his men near the barn. Their body language was easy, familiar. Years of working together showed. They're good men, Mrs. Chen said, following her gaze. Loyal. They stay when time's hard, not leave like others. Are times hard now? Mrs. Chen's expression turned guarded. Ranch life always hard. But Master Jake, he manage. You not worry. But Maggie had spent 2 years managing her husband's business affairs after his death. She knew evasion when she heard it. How hard she pressed. Mrs. Chen sighed. Cattle prices down. Bank want payment. Winter was rough, lose many cows. Master Jake, he worry but not say. Try fix everything himself. Financial trouble. Maggie's mind started calculating, planning. She knew business, knew numbers. If Jake needed help, don't tell him I told you, Mrs. Chen said quickly. He proud man, not like asking for help. I won't tell, but she would help, somehow. Emma had fallen asleep at the table. Maggie carried her upstairs, undressed in her, tucked her into the bed in the small room next to the master bedroom. Her daughter murmured something about horses and didn't wake. Maggie stood in the doorway watching Emma sleep. Her daughter was safe here. That was what mattered. Richard couldn't reach them in Montana. His Philadelphia lawyers had no power here. She'll be fine. Maggie turned. Jake stood at the top of the stairs, hat in hand. She's exhausted, Maggie said. 6 days on a train. New place. New people. Of course she is. He paused. You must be too. I am. They stood in the dim hallway, this stranger who was now her husband. Maggie felt suddenly acutely aware of the intimacy of the situation. Night, bedrooms, the two of them alone. Jake seemed to realize it too. He took a step back. I sleep in the barn. Bunkhouse is full and I won't. He stopped, started again. I'll sleep in the barn until you're comfortable here, until we know each other better. There's no rush. Maggie felt her throat tighten with unexpected gratitude. Thank you. Mrs. Chen will be here if you need anything. Clem sleeps light if there's trouble. You're safe. I believe you. He nodded and turned to leave, then stopped. Maggie. Yes. I meant what I said. You're perfect for this place. Don't let anyone tell you different. He walked downstairs. A moment later, she heard the front door close. Through the window, she watched him cross to the barn, lamp in hand. Maggie went into the master bedroom and closed the door. She changed into her nightgown, blew out the lamp, climbed into bed. The sheets smelled like lye soap and sunshine. The mattress was comfortable. Through the window came the sounds of night wind and owl cattle lowing in the distance. She should have been frightened, alone in a strange house in a strange land, married to a strange man. But somehow she felt safer than she had in months. Philadelphia seemed like another world. Richard's threats meaningless here. The society matrons who'd sneered at her size irrelevant. Everything that had defined her worth back home meant nothing in Montana. Here, strength mattered. Here, she was perfect. Maggie closed her eyes and for the first time since Thomas died, slept without nightmares. But she didn't know that Richard O'Brien had already hired a Pinkerton detective. She didn't know that Henry Frost was at that very moment boarding a westbound train with instructions to find Margaret O'Brien and bring her daughter back by any means necessary. She didn't know that the peace she felt was temporary. She didn't know that the hardest battles were still ahead. But for now, for this one night, Maggie O'Brien Thornton was safe, and that was enough. Maggie woke to the smell of coffee and frying bacon. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then reality settled Montana. Black Creek Ranch. Jake. Sunlight streamed through the window. She'd slept later than intended. Downstairs, she heard Mrs. Chen humming something in Chinese, heard the clatter of pans. Emma's voice bright and curious, asking questions. Maggie dressed quickly and went down. In the kitchen, Emma sat at the table with a cup of milk, watching Mrs. Chen work with fascination. Mama, Mrs. Chen showed me how to crack eggs without getting shells in them. Did she? Maggie kissed Emma's head. Good morning, Mrs. Chen. Good morning. You sleep late. That good. Need rest. The old woman gestured to the table. Sit, eat. Men already gone to work. Master Jake say let you sleep. Maggie sat. Mrs. Chen brought her coffee, eggs, bacon, toast. More food than Maggie usually allowed herself at breakfast. But Jake's words echoed, you look like you eat. That's good. She ate. What time did they leave? Maggie asked. Sunrise, much work today. Fence fixing. Master Jake, he checked cattle in North Pasture. Clement Jose go with. Billy fixed barn roof. And what should I do? Mrs. Chen looked surprised. You rest, settle in, unpack, get used to place. I'm settled. I'd like to help. Help with what? Whatever needs doing. Mrs. Chen studied her with those shrewd eyes, then nodded slowly. Garden need work, weeds everywhere, vegetables die. I too old to bend down all day. You know plants. Maggie thought of her grandmother's journals, the years spent learning herb lore, the garden they'd tended together in Ireland before the family emigrated. I know plants. Good, then you help garden. I show you where tools are. After breakfast, Maggie examined the garden. It was a disaster. Weeds choked what might have been carrots. The tomato plants were spindly and yellowing. The potato bed was a tangle. But the soil was good, the fence kept animals out, and with work, it could be productive. She found tools in the shed, hoe rake, spade bucket, rolled up her sleeves, got to work. The sun climbed higher. Sweat soaked her dress. Her back ached. But there was something satisfying about pulling weeds, about revealing the struggling vegetables underneath, about imposing order on chaos. Emma played nearby, making houses from pebbles. Mrs. Chen brought water at mid-morning. You work hard, the housekeeper observed. I like working. Last wife, she not like work. She likes sitting, reading magazines, looking at pictures. Maggie sat back on her heels. Mrs. Chen, can I ask you something? Ask. What was Caroline like, really like? The old woman was silent for a long moment. Then she settled onto the garden bench, her movement stiff. Miss Caroline, she come here 5 years ago. She from back east, Boston. Very beautiful, very delicate. Master Jake, he meet her when he go to buy bulls. She visiting her aunt. They court proper, get married. She come here. And she hate it. Mrs. Chen's voice was matter of fact. Hate dirt, hate work, hate cows, hate being far from city. She tried to make this place into Boston. Buy fancy things from catalogs, wear fancy dresses, get angry when they get dirty. Maggie could picture it. A delicate city woman trying to maintain standards in a place that didn't care about standards. Master Jake, he tried to make her happy, buy her things, let her decorate house. But nothing enough, she get more and more unhappy. Every morning she measure her waist with tape, write number in little book. I see the book once. She write, today, 24 inches, must be 22 by Christmas. 22 inches, that kill you. She wasn't fat. No, she normal, healthy. But those magazines, they make women think skinny is beautiful. Miss Caroline, she start eating less. then less. She hide food, put in napkin throw away when no one look. I find bread and trash meat under plate. One time she say to me, Mrs. Chen, if I eat Jake will stop loving me. Magazines say men only love thin wives. I tell her that's stupid. She cry. Mrs. Chen's voice hardened. He tell her she already beautiful, don't need to change. But she not listen. She get thinner, weaker, then she get pregnant. Doctors say she need eat more, baby need food. She eat little bit more, but not enough. Maggie's hands clenched in the dirt. Labor was hard, too hard. She not have strength to push. Baby got stuck. They both die. Master Jake, he hold her while she die. She say, I'm sorry I wasn't pretty enough. He tell her she was beautiful. She not believe him. Tears stung Maggie's eyes. Not for Caroline exactly. For all the women who'd been told their worth lived in their waistlines. For all the lives wasted trying to meet impossible standards. Master Jake, he blame himself. Think he should have forced her. But you can't force. She make her choice. Bad choice, but hers. Mrs. Chen stood. You different. You not care about being thin. That good. That what he need. After the old woman left, Maggie sat in the garden and cried. For Caroline, for herself. For every woman who'd ever been made to feel inadequate because of her body. Then she dried her tears and went back to work. By mid-afternoon, the garden looked transformed. Weeds gone, vegetables visible, rows neat. Maggie had identified several medicinal herbs growing wild along the fence and few chamomile wild mint. She'd started a separate patch for them. She was hauling water when she heard hoofbeats. Jake rode into the yard, followed by Clem and Jose. They dismounted at the barn. Jake saw her and changed direction. You've been working. It wasn't a question. The garden needed help. He looked at the transformed plot. Something shifted in his expression. You know plants. My grandmother taught me. She was a healer. In Ireland before the family came over. Healer. Herbs, remedies, midwifery. I learned some of it. Maggie hesitated. If anyone gets sick or injured, I might be able to help. Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Clem's got a bad knee. Won't admit it, but I've seen him limping. Billy cut his hand yesterday, wrapped it, but it's not healing clean. Would you look at them? Of course. That evening, Maggie examined both men. Clem's knee was inflamed, probably arthritis. She made a poultice of wild mint and chamomile, wrapped it, told him to keep it elevated. Billy's cut was infected. She cleaned it with hot water and salt, applied a paste made from the feverfew, rebandaged it. It'll hurt tonight, she told Billy. That means it's working. Change the bandage tomorrow. Come find me if it gets worse. Billy, barely 20, looked at her with something like awe. Where'd you learn this? My grandmother. She was the village healer back home. You a witch. He grinned to show he was joking. Just a woman who knows plants. But the next morning, Billy's hand was better. 3 days later, Clem's knee had stopped bothering him. Word spread. The men started coming to her with small injuries, aches, complaints they'd have normally ignored. Maggie discovered she had a purpose beyond being Jake's wife. A week passed, then 2. Maggie fell into the rhythm of ranch life. Wake at dawn, make breakfast with Mrs. Chen, tend the garden. Help with laundry, cooking, mending. Emma thrived, growing brown and sturdy, learning to collect eggs, feed chickens, identify bird calls. Jake remained polite but distant. He came to meals, talked about ranch business, asked Maggie's opinion occasionally. But he still slept in the barn, still maintained careful physical distance. Maggie told herself it was for the best. They were strangers. They needed time. But at night, alone in the big bed, she wondered what it would be like if he came to her. Not for duty, not because they were married, but because he wanted to. She pushed the thought away. Dangerous territory. On the 15th day, trouble arrived. Maggie was in the garden when Mrs. Chen called, someone coming. Stranger. A man on horseback approached from the east. Well-dressed, city clothes. He rode like someone who'd learned late in life. Maggie's stomach dropped. She knew somehow that this was connected to Richard. The man dismounted in the yard. Jake appeared from the barn, his hand near his gun. Help you, Jake's voice was flat. I'm looking for the postmaster. Need to send some telegrams. Post office is in town, 15 miles east. I see. The man's eyes found Maggie, studied her. Perhaps you can help me anyway. I'm looking for a woman. Large woman traveling with a child, about 5 years old. They might have arrived in the past few weeks. Maggie's heart hammered. Pinkerton. Had to be. Jake's expression didn't change. Montana's a big territory. Lots of women. Lots of children. This woman would stand out. Quite heavy. The child's name is Emma. Emma. He knew Emma's name. Jake's voice went cold. I don't know what you are talking about. Now get off my land. The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Of course. My apologies for disturbing you. He mounted his horse. If you do happen to see anyone matching that description, there's a reward. $500. Just send word to Henry Frost Billings Hotel. He rode away. Maggie stood frozen. $500. A fortune to most people. Enough to make anyone turn her in. Jake watched until the man disappeared. Then he turned to Maggie. Inside. Now. In the kitchen with Mrs. Chen and Emma sent upstairs, Jake faced Maggie across the table. Tell me everything. So she did. Richard's attempt to take Emma and the company. The lawyer claiming Maggie was an unfit mother because of her weight. The medical documents, the court threats, the reason she'd run. He hired a Pinkerton. Jake's jaw was tight. It seemed so. $500 means he's serious. I know. Why didn't you tell me before? Would you have married me if you'd known I was being hunted? Jake was silent. Then yes. Why, true? Because I asked for a wife who could survive Montana. You're surviving. That's what matters. He stood paced to the window. But this changes things. If he's willing to pay that much, he'll find you. Question is what we do about it. I could leave. Take Emma somewhere else. Where he'll just follow. And you're my wife now. That means you're my responsibility. I don't want to be anyone's responsibility. Jake turned. His eyes were fierce. Too late. You're here. Emma's here. That makes you mine to protect. And I keep what's mine. Something in his tone made Maggie's breath catch. Not possession. Something deeper. Commitment. What do you suggest? She asked. First, we make the marriage legal beyond question. Ceremony witnesses everything documented. Second, we find out what Montana law says about custody disputes from other states. Third, we prepare for him to show up in person. Because he will. You sound certain. I am. A man doesn't send a Pinkerton unless he's planning to come himself. Jake moved back to the table. How much is the company worth? At least $50,000, maybe more. Jake whistled. That's worth fighting for. It's Emma's inheritance. Thomas left it to her. Then we'll make sure she keeps it. He paused. Maggie, you need to know something. The ranch is in trouble. Financially. I've got debts. Banks threatening foreclosure. I was hoping to turn things around this season, but cattle prices are down. We might lose everything. So Mrs. Chen had been right. How much do you owe? $3,000. Maggie's mind raced. When is the payment due? End of summer. 3 months. And if you can't pay, bank takes the ranch. I lose everything I've built. They sat in silence. Two people with two different threats hanging over them. Financial ruin for him. Loss of her child for her. We could sell the company shares, Maggie said slowly. Use the money to save the ranch. No, Jake's voice was firm. That's Emma's future. We don't touch it. Then what? We work. We figure it out. Together. Together. The word felt foreign and right at the same time. Over the next week, Maggie threw herself into understanding the ranch finances. Jake showed her the books, the debt, the calculations. She saw the problem immediately, too dependent on cattle, not enough diversified income. The garden can feed us and provide surplus for market, she said. We can sell vegetables in town. Mrs. Chen's preserves. Maybe cheese and butter if we got dairy cows. That's woman's work. Won't bring in enough. Every dollar helps, and I have another idea. She pulled out her grandmother's journals. These remedies work. I've proven it with Clem and Billy. People will pay for medicine, especially out here far from doctors. Jake studied the journals. You could make money from this. If people trust me, if I can build a reputation. How long would that take? I don't know, but doing nothing guarantees we fail. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. All right, try it. We've got nothing to lose. That night after Emma was asleep, Maggie sat on the porch. The stars were incredible, thick as spilled salt. Jake emerged from the barn and crossed the yard. He sat on the porch steps, not close, but not far either. Thank you, Maggie said, for protecting us, for not sending us away. I don't break my word. I said you were mine. I meant it. I'm not property. Didn't say you were, but you're my wife. That means something to me. They sat in comfortable silence. An owl called from the barn, cattle lowed in the distance. The wind carried the scent of grass and earth. Jake, Maggie said quietly, can I ask you something? Ask. Do you regret it? Asking me to come here? He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then no, you're what this place needs. What I need, though, I didn't know it when I wrote that advertisement. What do you need? He turned to look at her. In the starlight, his face was shadowed, but his eyes were intense. I need someone who doesn't break. Someone strong, someone who fights instead of fading. His voice dropped. Carolyn gave up. She chose vanity over life. You choose life, every day. That's what I need. Maggie's throat was tight. I'm terrified, Jake. Terrified Richard will take Emma. Terrified I'll fail you. Terrified that even here, I'm just a burden. You're not a burden. How do you know? Because I've seen you work, seen you heal my men, seen you transform that garden, seen you be a mother to Emma and a partner to me, even though we barely know each other. He moved closer. You want to know what I'm terrified of? What? I'm terrified that if I let myself love again, I'll watch another woman fade away trying to be something she's not. I can't bury another wife, Maggie. I can't. The confession hung between them raw and honest. Maggie stood. They were close now. Close enough that she could see the scar on his jaw, the gray threading his hair, the lines around his eyes that spoke of hard years and harder choices. I won't fade, she said. I won't starve myself. I won't try to be something I'm not. I'm loud and fat, and I take up space, and I always will. If that's not what you want, it's exactly what I want. His voice was rough. You're the strongest woman I've ever met, and I'm falling in love with you anyway. Maggie's breath stopped. Jake, I know it's fast. I know we barely know each other, but I've had a wife who looked perfect and yet killed her. Now I have a wife who is perfect exactly as she is, and that terrifies me more than anything Richard O'Brien could do. I'm falling in love with you too, Maggie whispered, and you're right. It's terrifying. They stood there in the darkness, two damaged people finding each other in the vastness of Montana. Then Jake reached out and cupped her face with his calloused hand. Can I kiss you? Please. He kissed her like she was precious, like she mattered, like her size was irrelevant and her strength was everything. Maggie kissed him back and felt something broken inside her start to heal. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Jake rested his forehead against hers. We're going to get through this. The debt, Richard, all of it. Together. Together. But the next morning brought news that shattered their fragile peace. A telegram arrived from town. Jake read it, his face going pale. What is it? Maggie asked. Richard O'Brien is in Billings. He's filed papers with the territorial court. Custody hearing in 2 weeks. Jake crumpled the telegram. He's coming for Emma. Maggie felt the world tilt. 2 weeks, 14 days to prepare for the fight of her life. Emma appeared in the doorway, sleepy and smiling. Mama, is it time for breakfast? Maggie looked at her daughter. Her reason for running, her reason for fighting, her everything. Yes, sweetheart, time for breakfast. But as she moved through the morning routine, making eggs and toast, helping Emma dress, tending the garden, Maggie's mind was racing. Richard was here. The battle was coming. And this time she couldn't run. She had to stand and fight. For Emma, for the ranch, for the life she was building with Jake. For herself. That afternoon, Jake rode to town to meet with a lawyer. He returned grim-faced. What did he say? Maggie asked. He says Richard has a case. Eastern judge, Eastern lawyers. They'll argue that Montana is too rough for a child, that you're unfit because of how you look, that Emma would be better off in Philadelphia with family. What can we do? We show that Emma is thriving here, that you're a good mother, that the ranch is a good home." He paused. "And we hope the judge cares more about Emma's welfare than Richard's money." Over the next week, they prepared. Maggie documented everything: Emma's growth, her happiness, her health. Mrs. Chen wrote a statement about Maggie's character. The ranch hands did the same. The doctor in town examined Emma and declared her the healthiest child he'd seen in months. But Maggie knew it might not be enough. Richard had money lawyers' influence. She had only truth. Sometimes truth lost. The day before the hearing, Maggie stood in the garden looking at the vegetables she'd coaxed from the earth. Emma played nearby, healthy and laughing, her skin brown from the sun, her body strong from ranch life. Jake came to stand beside him. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he said quietly, "you're not alone. I'll be there. Mrs. Chen will be there. Half the town will be there. You have people now, Maggie. People who care. What if it's not enough? Then we fight harder." That night, Maggie tucked Emma into bed. Her daughter looked up at her with Thomas's eyes. "Mama, are we going back to Philadelphia?" Maggie's heart broke. "Why do you ask that? I heard you talking to Jake about Uncle Richard, about court." Emma's lower lip trembled. "I don't want to go back. I like it here. I like Jake. I like the horses and the chickens and Mrs. Chen's cookies." "Oh, sweetheart." Maggie gathered Emma into her arms. "We're going to do everything we can to stay. But what if we can't? Then we'll figure something else out. Together." "But Emma, listen to me. No matter what happens, I will never stop fighting for you. Never. You understand?" Emma nodded against her chest. After Emma fell asleep, Maggie went downstairs. Jake was on the porch. She sat beside him. "I'm scared," she admitted. "So am I." "What if we lose?" "We won't. You can't know that." Jake turned to her. In the lamplight from the window, his face was serious. "I know this Richard O'Brien underestimates you. He thinks you're weak because you're big. He thinks you ran because you're a coward. He doesn't see what I see." "What do you see?" "A woman who traveled 2,000 miles alone with a child, who stepped off a train in a place she'd never been to, marry a man she'd never met, who transformed a dying garden and healed my men and stood up to a Pinkerton detective, who faces every day with courage even when she's terrified." His hand found hers. "Richard sees a fat woman who won't fight back. I see the strongest person I know." Maggie kissed him. Hard, desperate, grateful. "Stay with me tonight," she whispered. "I don't want to be alone." Jake hesitated. "Maggie, not for that. Just stay, please." He nodded. They went upstairs together. Maggie changed into her nightgown while Jake waited in the hall. When she called him in, he settled into the chair by the window, prepared to keep watch. "The bed is big enough for two," Maggie said. "I don't want to presume." "You're not presuming, I'm asking." Slowly, he removed his boots and gun belt, climbed into bed beside her, still fully clothed. Maggie curled against him, her head on his chest, his arm around her shoulders. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me, the real me, not the body, not the woman society says I should be, but me. That's the only you I've ever seen." They fell asleep like that, two people facing impossible odds, finding strength in each other. But neither of them knew that Richard O'Brien wasn't planning to wait for the court hearing. Neither of them knew that he'd hired men, rough men, desperate men. Neither of them knew that tomorrow would bring not a courtroom battle, but something far more dangerous. Because Richard O'Brien didn't care about law or justice. He cared about control, and he was willing to do anything to get it, even if it meant taking Emma by force. Morning came too fast. Maggie woke wrapped in Jake's arms, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. For one perfect moment, she forgot about Richard, about the hearing, about everything except the warmth of this man who'd somehow become essential to her in just weeks. Then she heard Emma scream. Jake was out of bed before Maggie could move, gun in hand, racing toward Emma's room. Maggie followed, her heart hammering. Emma's room was empty. The window stood open, curtains blowing in the pre-dawn breeze. On the pillow lay a note. Jake snatched it up, his face going white with rage. He passed it to Maggie without a word. "Want your daughter back. Drop the custody case and sign over the company shares. Meet me at Silver Canyon noon today. Come alone or she dies. R.O." Maggie's legs gave out. She sank to the floor, the note trembling in her hands. Emma, her baby. Gone. Jake was already moving, pulling on his boots, strapping on his gun belt. Get dressed, we're getting her back. He said, come alone. I don't give a damn what he said. Jake's voice was pure steel. He took my daughter. I'm getting her back. My daughter. The words penetrated Maggie's panic. He'd said my daughter. She stood, forcing strength into her shaking legs. What do we do? We go to Silver Canyon, but not alone. Jake strode to the window, leaned out. Billy, get Clem and Jose. Now. Within minutes, the ranch was awake. Mrs. Chen appeared, her face grim when she heard. The three ranch hands assembled in the kitchen, armed and ready. Silver Canyon is old mining territory, Clem said. Been abandoned for years. Perfect place for an ambush. How many men does Richard have? Jake asked Maggie. I don't know. He hired the Pinkerton. Might have hired others. We assume he's not alone. Jake turned to his men. Clem, you ride to town. Get Sheriff Wade. Tell him what happened. Jose, Billy, you're with me and Maggie. I'm coming, Maggie said. Maggie, it's dangerous. She's my daughter. I'm coming. Jake looked at her, saw the determination in her eyes, nodded. All right, but you do exactly what I say. Understood. Understood. They rode out as the sun broke the horizon. Maggie had never been on a horse for more than a few minutes, but fear of her mom overrode everything else. Jake kept his bay close to her mare, ready to steady her if needed. Silver Canyon was 2 hours north. They rode hard, barely speaking. Maggie's mind raced with terrible possibilities. Emma scared, Emma hurt. Emma crying for her mama. She pushed the thoughts away. Emma was alive. Richard needed her alive for leverage. He wouldn't hurt her, not yet. The canyon appeared as a gash in the earth, red rock walls rising on either side of a narrow valley. Wooden structures dotted the landscape, remnants of the mining operation. Most were collapsed, but a few still stood, including a large building that must have been the office. Jake pulled up, studying the terrain. There. That's where he'll be. How do you know? Only building with walls intact. Good vantage point. Easy to defend. He turned to Jose and Billy. Circle around. Come in from the west. Wait for my signal. What signal? Billy asked. You'll know it when you hear it. The two men rode off, keeping to cover. Jake looked at Maggie. We ride in together. I do the talking. You stay behind me. If shooting starts, you get down and stay down. Clear, Shom, clear. They rode toward the office building. As they got closer, Maggie saw movement. Men on the roof, at least 3, maybe more. Richard had brought an army. They dismounted 50 yards from the building. Jake kept his hand near his gun. O'Brien, he called. We're here. Send out the girl. A door opened. Richard stepped out, and Maggie's hatred flared white hot. He looked exactly as she remembered, slim, well-dressed, handsome, in a way that hid the rot underneath. He held Emma by the wrist. Her daughter's face was tear-streaked, but unharmed. Mama! Emma tried to run. Richard yanked her back. Let her go, Maggie said, her voice shaking with fury. Good morning, Margaret. You're looking well-fed as always. Richard's smile was poisonous. I see you found yourself a cowboy. How rustic. Let Emma go, Jake repeated. This is between you and Maggie. The child doesn't need to be involved. On the contrary, the child is the entire point. Richard pulled Emma closer. Emma is worth $50,000 to me. Do you think I'd let her go? You're talking about a 5-year-old girl like she's property. She is property. Her father's property passed to me when he died. Her father left her to me, Maggie said. Thomas's will was clear. Thomas was weak. He let you manipulate him. But I'm not weak, Margaret, and I'm not going anywhere without what's mine. Jake's voice went cold. You're not taking anything. This is Montana territory. Your Philadelphia lawyers don't mean shit here, and kidnapping is a federal crime. Richard laughed. Kidnapping, I'm her legal guardian claiming custody of my niece from an unfit mother. No court will call that kidnapping. We'll see what the judge says. We won't be going to court. Richard's smile widened. Here's what's going to happen. Margaret will sign these papers. He pulled documents from his coat. She'll relinquish custody and transfer all company shares to me. Then I'll take Emma back to Philadelphia where she belongs. And if I refuse, Maggie asked, then I'll take Emma anyway, and you'll never see her again. Maggie's mind raced. She couldn't sign. Emma's entire future was in those shares, but she couldn't let Richard take her daughter. Jake spoke quietly so only Maggie could hear. Trust me. She looked at him, saw the plan forming behind his eyes, nodded slightly. All right, Maggie called. I'll sign, but I want Emma first. Do you think I'm stupid? You sign first, then you get the child. How do I know you'll keep your word? You don't, but what choice do you have? Maggie started walking toward him. Jake grabbed her arm. What are you doing? He hissed. Buying time, she whispered. Get in position. When I signal, you move. Maggie, no. Trust me. She pulled free and walked toward Richard, her hands empty, her posture defeated. Behind her, she heard Jake curse softly. But he would understand. He had to. Maggie reached Richard. Up close, she could smell his cologne, the same expensive scent he'd always worn. It made her want to vomit. Where do I sign? She asked. Richard produced a pen looking triumphant. Right here. And here. Initial. Here, there. Maggie took the papers. Looked at Emma. Her daughter was trying to be brave, but tears streaked her face. It's all right, sweetheart, Maggie said softly. Mama's here. She looked at the documents. Custody relinquishment. Share transfer. Everything Thomas had left them signed away. She thought of her grandmother, who taught her that a woman's strength wasn't in her size but in her courage. She thought of Jake, who'd shown her that love didn't mean being small. She thought of the life she was building in Montana, the purpose she'd found. And she made her choice. Maggie tore the papers in half. Richard's face went purple. What do you think you're doing? I'm not signing anything. Emma is my daughter. The company is her inheritance. And you're not taking either one. You stupid cow, I have men with guns. I have your daughter. You have nothing. She has me, Jake said. He'd moved closer, silent as a hunting cat. His gun was drawn, pointed at Richard's head. And me, said a voice from the roof. Jose stood on top of the office building, rifle trained on one of Richard's men. And me, Billy called from the west side, his weapon aimed at another. And me, said Sheriff Wade, emerging from behind a collapsed structure with two deputies. Richard looked around, his expression shifting from triumph to fury to fear. He was surrounded. Let go of the girl, Sheriff Wade said calmly. Do it now, Mr. O'Brien, before this gets worse for you. You can't do this. I have legal custody. I have rights. You have nothing, Jake said. No judge gave you custody. You kidnapped a child across state lines. That's a federal crime. You're going to prison. Emma bit Richard's hand. He yelped and released her. Emma ran. Not to Maggie, to Jake. He caught her, lifting her onto his hip, his gun still trained on Richard. You're safe now, little one. I've got you. Emma wrapped her arms around his neck. Papa Jake came for me. Papa Jake. Maggie's heart broke and healed at the same time. Richard made a desperate move, reaching for the gun at his waist. Jake fired. The bullet hit the dirt at Richard's feet. Next one goes through your hand, Jake said. Then your knee. Then places that'll hurt a lot more. Your choice, Mervon. Richard froze. Sheriff Wade and his deputies moved in, disarming Richard's men, slapping cuffs on wrists. The Pinkerton, Detective Frost, tried to run. Jose shot his hat off. He stopped running. Within minutes, it was over. Richard O'Brien, the man who'd made Maggie's life hell for 2 years, stood in handcuffs, his expensive suit covered in dust, his face twisted with impotent rage. This isn't over, he hissed at Maggie. I have lawyers. I have money. I'll fight this. From a federal prison, Sheriff Wade laughed. Good luck with that. They loaded Richard and his men onto horses, hands bound, dignity shattered. As they prepared to ride out, Richard looked at Maggie one last time. You're nothing, he said. A fat, worthless woman who got lucky. That's all you'll ever be. Maggie walked up to him, looked him in the eye. I'm a woman who's loved, who's valued, who has a family and a home and a future. I'm a woman who just won. She smiled. And you're a man going to prison for kidnapping. Who's really worthless here, Richard? Sheriff Wade laughed. Come on, O'Brien. You've got a long ride ahead of you. They rode out, taking Richard and his hired guns toward federal custody. Maggie stood with Jake and Emma, watching them disappear. Emma was still in Jake's arms, her face buried in his neck. He held her like she was the most precious thing in the world. You called him Papa, Maggie said softly. Emma looked up. Is that okay? Jake's voice was rough with emotion. That's more than okay, sweetheart. That's perfect. Maggie moved closer. Jake's free arm came around her, pulling her against him. The three of them stood there in Silver Canyon, surrounded by the wreckage of Richard's plan, and for the first time in 2 years, Maggie felt truly free. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we go home," Jake said, "and we become a family, a real family. But the court, Sheriff Wade will testify. So will the Pinkerton, once he realizes cooperation is better than prison. Richard's lawyers will drop the case once they know what he did. And even if they don't, no judge will give custody to a man in federal prison." Jake looked down at her. "You won, Maggie. Emma's safe. You're safe. It's over." She believed him. They rode back to Black Creek Ranch in the afternoon sun. Emma fell asleep against Jake's chest. Maggie rode beside them, her heart full of a feeling she'd almost forgotten. Hope. Mrs. Chen was waiting when they arrived. She took one look at Emma and burst into rapid Chinese that needed no translation. Relief, joy, gratitude. That evening, the whole ranch gathered for dinner. Clem, Jose, Billy, Mrs. Chen, Jake, Maggie, and Emma. A family not by blood, but by choice. To Emma, Clem raised his glass. "The bravest little girl in Montana." To Jake, Billy hesitated, "The best shot I've ever seen." To Maggie, Jake said quietly, "Who faced her demons and won." They ate and talked and laughed. Emma told her story 3 times, each version more dramatic than the last. The men listened with exaggerated attention, making her feel like a hero. After Emma was asleep, Maggie and Jake walked to the garden. The vegetables were thriving now, neat rows of green under the stars. "I have something to ask you," Jake said. "What?" He took her hands. "We're married legally. Papers signed and everything official. But it was done by proxy. You never had a choice. You never got to say yes because you wanted to, only because you had to." "Jake, let me finish." He dropped to one knee. Maggie's breath caught. "Margaret O'Brien Thornton, will you marry me? Not because you're running from something, not because you need protection, but because you want to, because we love each other, because we're building something real here." Tears filled her eyes. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He stood, kissed her. It was different this time. Not desperate, not scared, just full of promise and certainty and love. "We'll do it properly," he said. "Church wedding, the whole town invited, you in a white dress, Emma as flower girl, everything you deserve." "I don't need all that." "Maybe not, but I want to give it to you anyway." The wedding happened 2 weeks later. The entire town came. Maggie wore a dress Mrs. Chen and the other ranch women had sewn cream-colored with lace at the collar. Emma wore pink and carried wildflowers. Jake wore his best suit and looked nervous enough to bolt. But when Maggie walked down the aisle, his face transformed. Love, pure and simple and absolute. The minister spoke about partnership, about choosing each other every day, about building a life together. When it came time for vows, Jake had written his own. "Margaret, when I asked for a wife, I thought I needed someone practical, someone sturdy, someone who wouldn't break. I didn't know I was asking for you specifically. But the universe or God or plain luck gave me exactly what I needed." His voice shook slightly. "You taught me that strength isn't about size or beauty. It's about courage. The courage to survive, to hope, to love, even when the world says you shouldn't. You are my strength. You are my heart. And I promise to spend the rest of my life proving that you're valued, cherished, and loved exactly as you are." Maggie could barely speak through her tears, but she managed her own vow. "Jacob, I spent my whole life being told I was too much, too big, too loud, too hungry, too alive. But you showed me I was never too much. I was always exactly enough. You saw me when I was invisible to everyone else. You valued me when I thought I was worthless. You loved me when I couldn't love myself. And I promise to spend the rest of my life being the partner you deserve, the wife you chose, and the woman who will stand beside you through everything Montana throws at us." The minister pronounced them husband and wife. Jake kissed her like she was the only woman in the world. The reception was held at the ranch. Tables set up in the yard, food covering every surface, music from a fiddler who played until his fingers ached. Maggie danced with Jake, with Clem, with Sheriff Wade. Emma danced with everyone, her dress twirling, her laugh ringing out. As the sun set, Maggie stood on the porch and looked at the celebration. This community that had accepted her, this land that had challenged her, this life she'd built from desperation and hope. Jake came to stand beside her, happy, more than I ever thought possible. Good, because we've got work to do tomorrow. What work? The bank payment is due in 2 months. We're still 3,000 short. Maggie smiled. Actually, we're not. She told him about the orders she'd been taking for medicines for preserved vegetables for the cheese and butter they'd started producing, about the deals she'd made with shops in 3 different towns, about the calculations she'd run 100 times. We'll have the payment, she said, with enough left over to buy more cattle for next season. Jake stared at her. You did all that? We did it. Your ranch, my business, since Mrs. Chen's cooking the men's labor. We did it together. Together, he repeated. He pulled her close. I like the sound of that. The years that followed proved their partnership unbreakable. The ranch grew from 2,400 acres to 8,000. They diversified cattle, horses, dairy crops, Maggie's medicine business. They hired more hands, built a bigger house, became one of the most successful operations in Montana. Emma thrived, growing strong and confident. At 13, she announced she wanted to be a doctor. At 18, she left for medical school in Boston, the first woman from Montana to do so. Jake and Maggie had 3 more children. James, who inherited his father's love of ranching. Caroline, named for the woman who died so they could live, who became a midwife like her mother. Sarah, the youngest, who became a teacher. The community grew around them. Black Creek became Black Creek Station when the railroad came through. The Thornton name became synonymous with integrity, hard work, and acceptance. But all stories end. 38 years after Maggie stepped off that train in Billings, Jake Thornton died peacefully in his sleep, holding his wife's hand. He was 77. He'd lived long enough to see his children grown, his grandchildren born, his ranch become a legacy. Maggie buried him on the hillside overlooking Black Creek beneath a stone that read, Jacob Thornton, 1848 to 1915. He loved a woman not for how she looked, but for who she was. 5 years later, in 1920, 86-year-old Maggie Thornton sat in a rocking chair on the porch of Black Creek Ranch. A young woman from a magazine sat across from her, notebook in hand. Mrs. Thornton, you're something of a legend, the mail-order bride who built an empire. Can you tell our readers your secret? Maggie looked out at the ranch. 8,000 acres now, 30 employees, 300 head of cattle, a dairy operation that supplied 5 counties, fields of wheat and oats. The medicine business she'd started now had a factory in town employing 20 women. No secret, she said, just stubbornness. Surely there's more to it than that. Maggie was quiet for a moment. She thought about that terrified woman on the Philadelphia platform, about the man who'd called her perfect on first sight, about the life they'd built together brick by brick, choice by choice. You want to know the truth? She asked. I'll tell you. She leaned forward, her eyes still sharp despite her age. I was told my whole life that I was worthless because of my peace, that no man would want me, that I should be ashamed of taking up space. I believed it for a long time. What changed? Montana changed. Or maybe I changed. Or maybe I just found a man who saw past the lies society tells about women's bodies and saw the truth underneath. Which is that a woman's worth has nothing to do with her weight or her waist. It's in her work, her courage, her love. It's in what she builds and who she helps and the legacy she leaves behind. The young woman scribbled frantically. That's beautiful, Mrs. Thornton. It's true, and it's what I want young women to know. Maggie's voice strengthened. You'll be told you're not pretty enough, not thin enough, not perfect enough. Don't believe it. Find a place that values your strength. Find work that challenges you. Find people who see you, truly see you, and love what they find. That's where happiness lives. Not in a number on a scale or a size on a dress, but in a life fully lived. Is that what you found here? That and more. As if summoned, Maggie's family appeared. Emma, now 51, a respected doctor in Billings. James, 43, running the ranch with his son. Carolyn, 40, training the next generation of midwives. Sarah, 36, teaching in the school that bore the Thornton name. And grandchildren, 12 of them ranging from 20 to 3. Running, playing, arguing, laughing, life continuing. Emma came to kiss Maggie's cheek. Grandma, we're about to start Sunday dinner. Are you ready? In a moment, sweetheart. After the reporter left, Maggie walked slowly to the hillside. Her joints ached, her body finally showing its age. But she made the climb every Sunday without fail. Jake's grave was well tended. Someone, probably James, had placed fresh wildflowers in the vase. Maggie lowered herself to sit on the bench beside the stone. "They're all here today," she told him. "All four children, all the grandchildren. Little Emma, the great-granddaughter, she looks just like our Emma did at that age. Same curls, same spirit." She was quiet for a moment, listening to the wind, the distant laughter from the ranch. "I miss you," she said, "every day, but I'm not lonely. You left me too much to do, too many people to love, too much legacy to manage." She touched the stone warm from the sun. "Thank you, Jacob, for seeing me, for loving me, for teaching me that I was always enough exactly as I was. You changed my life. You changed me." From the ranch, a voice called, "Grandma, dinner." Maggie stood using the bench for support. She looked one last time at the grave, at the words carved in stone, at the view Jake had loved. Then she walked back down the hill toward the noise and warmth of family, toward the ranch that had become an empire, toward the life she'd built from nothing but courage and love, and the absolute certainty that she deserved to take up space in the world. At dinner, surrounded by children and grandchildren, Maggie told the story they always asked for: how she'd met their grandfather, how he'd called her perfect, how they'd faced down villains and saved the ranch and built a legacy that would outlast them both. Little Emma, the great-granddaughter, asked the question they all did eventually. "Grandma, were you scared when you got on that train to Montana?" Maggie thought about it, about that terrified woman with nothing but hope and desperation, about the journey that had changed everything. "Terrified," she admitted. "I thought I was running away from my problems, but I was really running toward my life, toward your grandfather, toward all of you." Do you ever wish you'd stayed in Philadelphia? Not for a single second. After dinner, as the family dispersed to their evening activities, Maggie sat on the porch one last time. The ranch spread out before her, golden in the sunset. Cattle grazing, horses in the corral, the vegetable garden, now massive, tended by Sarah's students as a teaching project. Everything she and Jake had built, still standing, still growing, still mattering. The young reporter's question echoed, "What's your secret?" Maggie smiled. The secret was simple. She'd stopped letting fear make her choices. She'd stopped believing the lies about her worth. She'd stopped making herself small to fit into spaces that were never meant for her. She'd found a place that valued strength over beauty, a man who loved her exactly as she was, a life that challenged her and fulfilled her and gave her purpose beyond mere survival. She'd learned that love wasn't about being perfect. It was about being seen, being valued, being cherished for all the things that made you exactly who you were. Her first meeting with Jake had been terrifying, but it had also been the beginning of everything good in her life, and that more than anything was worth remembering. As the sun set over Black Creek Ranch, casting long shadows across the land, Maggie Thornton closed her eyes and felt the warmth on her face. Somewhere in the house, her grandchildren laughed. Somewhere in the fields, her legacy continued. And somewhere in her heart, Jake was still there, still calling her perfect, still loving her exactly as she was. She'd spent her whole life being told she was too much. But here in this hard land, with this good man and this beautiful family, she'd learned the truth. She was never too much. She was always exactly enough. And that made all the difference. Not just for her, but for every woman who came after, who learned she could be exactly who she was and still be loved. That was the legacy. That was what mattered. That was the story worth telling.